So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Hi, this is Brett Swarts, host of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Show. Welcome to another episode where we help you create and preserve more wealth by developing a tax deferral plan and also other ideas to help you along your journey through whether it be retirement, whether it be through passive income tax deferral, and or creating a passive income tax stream. We are joined by our guest today. He sells about 30 homes or so annually in the senior, he's really focused in the senior real estate focus in the St. Louis area, St. Louis, Missouri. He's a licensed real estate broker. He's also a certified senior advisor, a senior real estate specialist and certified senior, basically housing professional overall. And he's really one of the only ones who have all of these designations. And he's truly a niche specialist when it comes to helping folks who are transitioning, selling a home, maybe going into senior housing, which we're going to dive into right here. He also is the founder of Senior Learning Institute. You can find him at seniorlearninginstitute.com, and also trustandted.com are his websites. Please welcome to the show, Ted Gottlieb. Ted, welcome to the show.
Brett, thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So Ted, maybe tell us a little bit about your background, quickly about your story and also your current focus.
Well, I've been a licensed real estate agent since 2003, became a broker in 2005, though I don't act as a broker today. I wanted to have that designation just in case I wanted to go out on my own one day. I started out as an investor, a speculator. I used to buy homes and flip homes, normally didn't do anything to them, then got involved with new construction and historic reconstruction or preservation in the St. Louis market, sold about 100 new homes over the years. And when the market shifted in 2008, needed to reinvent myself, decided to get back involved in traditional real estate as a traditional agent would, working with buyers and sellers. Struggled there for a little bit because I was used to having people come to me, and now all of a sudden I had to find them, and there was a whole lot of real estate agents out there. Right along that time when I was reinventing myself, I came across a gentleman at the health club of all places, and his name was Al. And he was one of those old throwback guys, fedora, silk underwear, cashmere jacket type guys that they don't make anymore. And we hit it off, and he became a close friend, an extension of the family, a local grandparent to my kids. And I watched him be a totally independent individual, from a 3-story walk-up to an elevated building to a garden apartment to independent living, assisted living, hospice, and then death. While he was still very active, the light bulb went off, and I said, I thoroughly love being around older adults and seniors, and why don't I focus on the older adult niche? And then I went out and got a variety of designations that gave me additional information, realized that I needed to learn more. So I've got more designations and more initials after my name that I have in my name at this point, and thoroughly enjoy advocating and assisting folks during this period of time that can often be paralyzing. So it's a whole lot of fun. It's very satisfying, long process, but a very enjoyable process as well.
So Ted, tell us a little bit more about your background. I want you to go back to your maybe your childhood, and I think we're all been given certain strengths in life, and some people call them superpowers. I call them God-given gifts, and we've been given these certain gifts, and maybe there's one that sticks out for you that you were given, and I want you to correlate how that connects to how you help seniors today. What was the gift that Ted was given? How does that help you help seniors today?
That's a great question. I was born with a lot of personality. My mother wished that if I had a son, he would be a lot like me, and her wish came true. Okay, and it's been challenging, but I've always had a lot of personality. I've always had an opinion, and I carry that to this day. The other gift that I had was an uncle of mine. Now that I'm thinking back at it, this was a question which is a great one that I wasn't expecting, but I had an Uncle Ben, and an Uncle Ben was that older uncle that I thoroughly loved and just admired. I lived in Philly. He was in New York. We used to go see them all the time. And it was just that certain bond that I had with him. And looking back on him and one other individual, I was always attracted to the older adults. So this kind of finally came to fore in as I mentioned, about 2010 or so, but it's always been there, and I've always just gotten along with and appreciated being with the older folks. So it's interesting how it's come full circle.
Yeah, I think, when someone says successful as you are, what I've found, especially those who I interview on this show, it's exactly that. It tends to come full circle. And the key is to have the courage to dive into it when you see those signs and you're given those opportunities, and then to go all in, right? Burn the ships from what you did before, and then you can really serve in your best God-given gifts and your best strengths. So, Ted, with that being said, part of our listenership is baby boomers, right? They're struggling with highly appreciated homes, real estate, or businesses, and they're selling. And part of that is we're helping them to defer capital gains taxes using different tax deferral strategies. But the other side of it often is the personal reasons for selling, right? Or the emotional transitions. And so I'm curious, Ted, you're a big part of all of that. And what is the single biggest challenge with that you've seen in general for baby boomers as they're making a transition between, let's just say, a house to senior care, or even retirement to something else? What is the biggest thing that they're faced with today, and in your experience over the last few years, and how do you best help them?
Well, I'm visualizing the baby boomers being the children of the seniors that I'm working. So that's kind of my foundation there. Are we on the same page with that?
Absolutely. And by the way, it could be a both too, because it could be the baby boomer son or daughter who's taking care of their senior parents. And it's a great designation there. So maybe talk a little bit about both. How are you helping the families who are helping their parents transition, and vice versa? How are you helping the seniors transition with their families, the baby boomer kids?
Well, you'd be surprised how many kids are not involved. And that may be because they don't want to be, or maybe because mom and dad don't want them to be, and they want to shelter them from that. But there's that family dynamic. It's typically the daughter that's helping out. My parents' case, she's got two sons, so she has no choice. But it's one of those things where there are some kids who are really, really involved, and there's some kids who prefer not to be involved. And then I've got a situation right now where someone approached me yesterday. There's 7 siblings. Okay, one of them's here in the St. Louis area. The rest of them are spread all over the place. And let's just say the siblings aren't playing really nice together. So it's becoming a challenge as to what to do with mom and dad. One of them has power of attorney, but they don't do a lot of estate planning either. And that's one of the things that I'm finding is that, looking back, and one of the things I'm going to do for my children is make sure that I have an estate plan in place, a trust in place, in order to avoid probate, and in order to make sure that my wishes are adhered to, and to help reduce the chances of having that friction between family members that can break families apart. A lot of it comes down to, what mom and dad are going to leave, who's going to split it, who's going to handle what, who's taking care of mom and dad. I'm living in St. Louis. Let's just say mom and dad are here and I'm doing all the grunt work. But meanwhile, I've got a brother who's living someplace else who doesn't appreciate what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and wants to have a whole lot of feedback, but he's not getting his hands dirty. So those dynamics come all the time. There are a tremendous amount of care managers that actually act as a neutral third party to help families get through those processes. So you've got that dynamic, which is always there. I had a client who just recently passed away. The daughter was not involved at all, but my client wanted to maximize the return on the house for her, for his legacy, and to give her as much money as he possibly could. And he made a short-sighted decision. Instead of selling the house in its current condition, and I had a contract on it, let's just say it was for $175,000. He decided he wanted to fix it up so that he could maximize the return. Well, he ended up passing away during the renovation process. The daughter came in town and decided that she wanted to do things a little bit differently. I'm now no longer in the equation. And I spent about 6 months working with this gentleman being his advocate. And now, that's gone, and that's fine because we were doing what was in his best interest. But meanwhile, he's now upside down on that property compared to what he would have been had he taken the money up front. I'm not a big fan of selling as is, but there are certain particular times when it makes sense. And this happened to be one of those times. So you've got that going on as well. And the parents also, I'm still a kid to my parents. I'm approaching 60, and I'm probably still little Teddy, who created havoc back in the day. And though I think there's a level of respect and they want my opinion, they're still the parents. And a lot of parents want to maintain control, and you maintain control in a variety of different ways. And one of them is by doing is what you want to do and maybe keeping the kids out of the loop. The problem is that sometimes the kids have to clean up the mess when it's done. So when you can communicate well and you have that dynamic where it's a win-win for everybody, that's the best way to go. It just doesn't happen all the time, and sometimes it's more infrequent than you would hope it would be.
Excellent. So keeping communication lines open, right? Understanding roles and responsibilities for different siblings who may be taking on a heavier role. And of course, it's easier to criticize from a distance, right? When you're not in the day-to-day, challenges, or it's easy not to have the stress and think it's an easy solution, but if you're not there. So if you're the sibling who lives out of state, having a lot of grace and a lot of, humility to say, hey, you guys are on the ground. How can I support, right? Versus criticize, and then having a good estate plan in place to make sure everything's clear and it's laid out so people aren't having to face probate. Are those some of the summaries there?
Yes, no doubt about it. And that's one of the things. I'm this weird hybrid because I'm a real estate agent and I earn my living by selling real estate, but I'm also a certified senior advisor with a fiduciary responsibility for my clients. So I walk in and I ask for permission to take my real estate agent hat off, and we talk about the plan and what is your plan. And the first thing I said is, do we have a plan? Where are we going to go? Do we have a plan? Do we know if we can afford it? Do you have an estate plan established? Do you have a financial advisor established? What is in your best interest? We want to make sure that you can afford to wherever it is that you're thinking about going. We want to determine what the equity is in the house because that's part of the equation. But we work as a team, and I've got several elder law or estate planning attorneys that I refer to, and they refer back. And I've got financial advisors, and we sit down together. And oftentimes I'm part of that conversation because I've built that relationship with that older adult who may not have an advocate here, who wants somebody that's going to be there to provide the support that they so desperately want and sometimes desperately need.
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the head, right? Being their advocate and adding value beyond just being a real estate agent, right? You're a senior housing specialist who's not only selling their house and maximizing the value and getting the as many offers as you can, but you're actually helping them with the transition of the estate, or getting an estate planning attorney, or making sure you have the budget, or making sure that they have a clear exit plan for where they're going to be in life as it pertains maybe to their healthcare needs and as it pertains to their finances. So maybe shift to the healthcare needs and walk us through some of the challenges you're seeing there as far as somebody who's wanting to sell a house, maybe they've been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and now needing that additional care, right? Walk us through some of those challenges there as it pertains to finances, as well as it pertains to just the emotional change that happens there.
Well, there's so much there to talk about. I was in a conference this morning with a St. Louis University doctorate who was talking about loneliness and how it impacts our cognitive skills and dementia and all those things. But bottom line is, and I do a lot of seminars here in St. Louis, and the first seminar we're doing in March is on aging in place. Most people, and the numbers tend to differ, but most people, and the number tends to be 90% or more of individuals, want to stay in place forever. They want to stay put. They want to go out feet first. You hear it all the time. And sometimes it's appropriate, a lot of times that it is. And when someone wants to stay put and age in place, then I'm there to provide them the resources that they need to do that safely. We're talking about aging in place strategies, grab bars, walk-in showers, stair climbers, medical alert systems, all those things that need to be put in place for them to be successful there. Because what ends up happening if the house is not set up properly, we work with or we find that they fall and have all sorts of issues that lead to medical issues that, falls tend to be the kiss of death. I've got a 92-year-old father who lives in Florida on a totally ceramic floor who doesn't necessarily have the base, the balance that he has or needs. You trip on a throw rug that doesn't really need to be there. Next thing you know, you're breaking a hip, you're breaking an elbow, you're breaking a head, which leads to even worse situations and sometimes death. So you try to be proactive in regard to those things. But hey, look, my mom likes the way that the throw rug looks in front of the sink. And even though dad may trip on it every time he walks by it, it's not registering. So, we have those conversations, but let's just say someone's able to age in place. Aging in place is a term that's shifted, because aging in place can mean aging in place wherever you are. It's aging in place in your home. It's aging in place in your independent living community. It's aging in place in an assisted living community so that you don't have to go to a skilled community. So aging in place is staying put wherever you are. But for this conversation, let's just say that we're going to stay in our house. The problem is that sometimes it becomes isolating. People drive when they shouldn't be driving. Sometimes they can't drive anymore. Oftentimes they need help going for shopping. There's no wellness checks. So there's not a neighbor checking in to make sure things okay. I've had several situations where I've been involved with older folks who, can eat off one baked chicken during the week. They're not eating well. So you've got aging in place, but are you aging in place well? And are you lonely? And are you doing the things that you need to do in order to be successful and to be happy? And are you joyful? There's all those things. So aging in place can make sense, but sometimes aging in place in your home is not the best place to be. Social interaction is so important. Proper nutrition is so important. You have all these things that are so important that you may not be able to do on your own at home. And you may not be willing to pay for it to have somebody come in. So that's the next step. So let's say you need companion care. There's nobody in town to help, or the kids are working all the time and they're not available to between the hours of 8 and 5, and then one of the kids comes over for dinner, but you need somebody there to engage and to make sure that you're toileting and bathing and eating well and doing your laundry. I've got one client right now that's got a stair climber, and they only use it in order to be able to take the laundry up and down the stairs. That's what they use it for. So being set up for success is really important. But let's just say that you need additional help. There are home care companies that come in. These are what I call custodial care companies. These don't provide medical care. They're CNAs potentially, but they're companions, and they will help with light housekeeping and maybe make some meals, and they'll play cards with you and do all those things and maybe take you shopping. Those are companions. They typically, depends on the market that you're in, can charge between, let's just say, $20 and $25 to $30 an hour. So let's say you're doing that 8 hours a day times 5 days a week or 7 days a week. Those numbers start to add up. So can you afford to do that? Or are you better off going to an independent or assisted living community where your meals are prepared and you have more social interaction and all those things? So it starts to become a math problem. But I find oftentimes folks would rather stay where they are to a certain point. But when you get to the point where you're needing continual care and 24-hour care, you start doing the math there. The math is pretty obvious. You're better off going to an assisted living community. But again, not a lot of people are excited about that. Some people thrive in that environment. And other people choose not to go to that environment. They don't want to be around people. They've been around people long enough, and they don't necessarily want the dynamic that goes along with that. And then you've got the other problem is, where do I go and what's the right community for me? There are national companies and local companies that do nothing but help seniors and their children find the right community for mom and dad. I tend to refer to some local, what they're called transition coordinators, that know the good, the bad, and the ugly of every community at every level of skill in the St. Louis metropolitan area. And these people are nationwide, that can tell you and answer the questions and ask the questions that you don't know to ask, because one of the worst things that can happen is you go to the wrong place the first time and maybe the second time. So you've got the trauma of leaving your home where you're comfortable and you have all the memories, to go to a community that doesn't work out for a variety of different reasons. It could be socioeconomic. It could be you don't like the food. It could be a bad location, whatever it is. But there's all sorts of reasons why it doesn't work out the first time. Having somebody coach you through that so that you can avoid the mistake of picking the wrong community is something that's essential. And it's a free service offered to the individual, the person who helps you find the right community gets paid a small commission of sorts if you end up going to that community. So there's all sorts of resources out there that that are worthwhile taking advantage of, and having someone who's got my background in your local area makes all the sense in the world. And then, of course, if you don't have those resources, I can refer them to you. It would be my pleasure to do that.
I love that, Ted. I love your heart for service and your attention to detail here, and all the tough questions and good questions that you're asking, and really challenging, because this is such a need, and it's the largest one of the largest now, that generation and the baby boomers, and it's all coming up, and there's such a need for senior housing and senior care and transition. And I just feel like the education is just not out there, or we're not looking for it, right? And we need to be I think, taking the approach of being educated and being proactive and setting a plan, but also supportive of one another, because it's new to everybody, right? I mean, essentially, you're a son or a daughter, and now your parents are going through it for the first time. So you've never faced it before, and they've never faced it before either. So, unless it was their parents, how many 30 years before that. So thank you for what you're doing. It is a great service. I'm curious, Ted, what's the most rewarding part of what you do?
And remind me to let's talk about the sandwich generation too, by the way, about those kids that also have younger children but are still working with mom and dad, because that makes it even more challenging for their daughter or son who are dealing with that. But in regard to what's rewarding, I guess it's, first of all, what's rewarding to me is actually going in and sitting down and having the conversations and enjoying their company. I just sat down with a couple that's going to a continual care community here in the St. Louis area. He is a retired professor. She's a fine artist. And we're just sitting talking about a variety of different things that have nothing to do with the real estate transaction, nothing to do with their transition, but actually sitting and enjoying their experiences in life and actually having fun. So I get more joy out of that than almost anything else. But what's really intriguing to me too is, I guess, maximizing when it comes to selling the house. It's first of all, it's helping them get through the transition itself and getting them organized. But then when it comes to selling the house, it's really doing the work that needs to be done to maximize their return. Sometimes the money isn't important. I had one particular client just recently say to me, the money's not important. We want to sell it as is and get out of here. And I helped them do that. But we ended up selling it for about $40,000, $50,000 more than we would have had I not been part of the equation, because we got the investors to bid against one another. So and I also was able to get the investors to agree to leave all the property in the house so that they didn't have a disposal fee. So we had all of that. But really where it comes into play is making sure that I can maximize their return. I try to avoid the as-is sale, very, very convenient sale. But I've had clients potentially between, let's say, $20,000 and $90,000 on the table because it was suggested to them that they should sell it to a flipper or an investor because it was easy and it was cash and it was quick. And yes, all that is true, but that investor is trying to buy it for as little as possible. And more than likely that investor is going to flip it to somebody else and make a quick 15, 20, 30, 40 grand. I've seen it happen. So the most pride I have is actually being able to get as much as I can out of the property, whether the money's important, because the money goes for the care and the money goes for the legacy. And if I can get somebody 20, 30, 50, $90,000 more, I can help them stay in that assisted living community or independent living community longer because their money's going to last longer. And that's one of the little gripes I've had with some senior living communities is that their marketing people are so, I don't want to say incentivized, but there's such demand to fill the vacancies and to keep the beds filled because their census is so important that oftentimes getting people in seems to be more important than actually the process itself and maximizing the return that individual is going to maintain. So I have actually said to a community or two, I understand the importance of getting them in, and I appreciate that, but your retention rate is also very important as well, because there's another level of pressure there. You need to retain your clients. So if I can get more for the house and they can stay in your community for 2 or 3 years longer, aren't we all better off? And the answer is, of course, yes. So part of what I do, as with age comes wisdom, and with age also comes the ability of actually saying things that you truly feel in a reasonable tone, but kind of holding people to task and say, hey, wait a second, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about them. How are we going to maximize their return everyone's going to win here, but let's think outside the box. And as I like to add value, I challenge the people that I refer to and the people that I surround me is, how are you going to add value? Adding value in what we do is so important. Anybody can sell a house. Okay. Now, how am I going to add value? What is my value added statement? What do I do differently than anybody else? I focus on seniors. I've got the resources, and I've got almost 20 years of experience. And these are also the things that I'm going to do to help you sell your house for more. And there's a variety of techniques that I use that are very effective that most folks will buy into. Some are stubborn and some don't. And ultimately, unfortunately, most of the time they sell the house for less than what they could have had they taken the advice up front. And you're not always successful at that. But, it's all about adding value.
Yeah, that's so true, right? If you can do more than what you're getting paid for, the customer is going to be happier, the client's going to be more successful, you're going to be more successful, and it is truly about adding value beyond just the practical part of the external need, which may be sell a house, but what are the internal needs? Or what are the questions they're not asking? Or are they having a plan and a budget and a state plan and transitioning all of that? Who is their advocate? Those are all things above and beyond what separates you from the competition. So you ready for the lightning round, Ted?
I'm ready for the lightning round, and I would like to talk to you also. Just make sure that we include the value of estate planning and trusts and wills and durable powers of attorney and all of that, because that's a huge thing that a lot of people overlook that ends up being problematic at the end.
Let's do that right now, and then we'll come back to the lightning round. So let's talk exactly about that. What is some advice and some tips on that for our listeners?
Well, typically, I'll talk about the state of Missouri. We have a will, and a will basically is a living document. And we might have power of attorneys involved. So a power of attorney might be a child, and we have HIPAA releases, and we have all those things. We have living wills and all of that. Having that all in place is great. But when someone passes away, if there's not a trust involved, it's very probable here in the state that it's going to go to probate. Okay, so probate doesn't stop just because you have a will. The will is there while you're living, and the powers of attorney are there while you're living, but probate becomes an issue. Probate means basically that the courts get involved. There's fees that are involved. There's delays that are involved in regard to disposal of property. For instance, mom passes away. I'm her power of attorney. That power of attorney is no good anymore. There's a house there that I would like to sell and get rid of. I can't do that until it goes through probate and I get permission by the courts to sell the house. And then what happens to that money is not necessarily going in my pocket. It may have to go somewhere else until all that is settled. So there's a timeliness factor of it as well. The trust, and this is where, I know enough to be dangerous, but the trusts are really make sense for a lot of people, not for everybody. But the idea of having a trust and having everything determine where things are going to go is great. It's also great for Medicaid planning as well, asset protection planning and all of those things. So that comes into place as well. But it avoids probate, which is really, really critical. And even though it seems expensive up front, and here, in the St. Louis area, depending upon the attorneys that you go to and how I guess detailed of a plan is required. Let's just say the range for an estate plan here could be anywhere between, let's just say, $2,000 to $8,000 to $10,000, and that's really on the high end. But figure roughly $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 is what you're going to spend to put a trust together here in St. Louis. You're going to spend 2, 3, 4 times that dealing with probate and everything else that goes along with that. So oftentimes people will say, I don't want to trust because it's too expensive. No, it's too expensive not to do that. It's too expensive financially and emotionally, and for the dynamics of what you leave behind and your legacy. So if there's one piece of advice I would have is that get yourself affiliated with a great financial advisor. Team that financial advisor up with a good elder law attorney or estate planning attorney, one of the two. There is a difference in twist in regard to what they do, but really, really focus there and build your team, and you'll feel much better. And knowing that everything's taken care of in your legacy is more of a positive one than one of look at the mess we've left behind. And a lot of people leave a mess behind, but they don't realize that they're doing it. And so you can't blame folks for that, but I'd say really take a good look at that and talk to your professionals and really help preserve your legacy.
So let's transition to the lightning round. Thank you for sharing that wisdom, Ted. That was fantastic. You ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
Favorite book you've read in the past 6 months?
Believe it or not, it's going to sound bad, but Downsizing Guide by Ingrid Sullivan.
Okay, that sounds like a good book. Favorite podcast perhaps you're listening to that you like right now?
I'm going to say yours.
Oh, thanks. The especially if you're on the show. So the best place to vacation in Missouri during the summer.
Oh, goodness. A lot of people will go to the Lake of the Ozarks. It's a big lake outside of St. Louis, a couple hours outside of St. Louis. But quite honestly, a lot of people come to St. Louis and vacation in the city of St. Louis and go to the Cardinals games and enjoy downtown St. Louis, which is becoming a lot more revitalized.
Awesome. Have you seen the show, the Netflix show yet, Ozarks?
Oh, yeah.
For our listeners who are not from Missouri, how is it pretty close to some stuff that's going on out there?
No, I would say none of that stuff is going on that I know of, but it's very, very scenic. It's beautiful. The lakes can get really crowded. There are some smaller lakes as well. We're not big lake people, so we don't go down too much, but people love it. They've been doing it for generations. So, there are a lot of people that love to fish and love to boat here in the area. And being an East Coaster, that's kind of news to me. We would go to the shore or the beach versus going to the lakes. We didn't have lakes that we knew of back then.
Last question for the lightning round. Since you said you're from Philadelphia, is it Steelers or is it Eagles?
Oh, it's Eagles. I'm born and raised in Philly, in the city of Philly. And I always say that since we were on the right side of the state, that Pittsburgh was on the wrong side of the state. So, being a Penn Stater versus a Pitt guy, the big rivalry back in the day when I was in school was Penn State versus Pitt. And Pittsburgh's a lovely area, but doesn't compare to the fine culture of the city of Philadelphia.
There you have it. That's it. Ends our lightning round. Now we're going to finish with our last question, Ted. And this is my favorite question, and I think a lot of our listeners' favorite question too. And it's really centered on you personally. And how do you stay centered on your values? And how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach your new goals, right? You've been doing this for 30 years, helping a lot of people, and you've helped a lot of families. So how do you stay centered in your values and then stay encouraged to reach to new goals?
Well, the values, it's interesting because I look back and didn't realize and values were being instilled upon me when I was an infant, but apparently what mom and dad did was a good job with that. And I joke about the fact that I'm from Philly. I'm not supposed to have a moral compass, but I found a moral compass, and it was probably already there. I think maybe the Midwestern values and a lot of the folks that I've witnessed here have really helped change my dynamic. I had a lot more personality 30 years ago when I came to St. Louis. Funny story, I beat my horn once when I first came to St. Louis, and people looked at me like I was crazy. Go to a Cardinals game and people would sit on their hands and it was quiet. Someone would spill a beer and one of the ushers would come and clean it up. That was unheard of to me. I left my wallet someplace and I went into a store and somebody said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Pay me when you come back." That's really neat. And St. Louis is a very cool community. A lot of transplants are here, Midwestern values, a very good quality of life. And I've thoroughly have enjoyed that. So I think St. Louis has rubbed off on me, and obviously what my folks have done in regard to raising me has certainly helped with those values. No question about it. It does bother me though, because you surround yourself with good people, hopefully, but then you see other folks that may not share those same values, and sometimes you just kind of shake your head. I think Mark Twain said, "The more I get to know people, the more I love dogs," which I thought was awesome. It's a phenomenal statement. I guess the older I get, the crustier I get, and the more skeptical I've become in regard to humanity as a whole. But you try to surround yourself with good people, and it helps you sleep well at night, and that's what I'm trying to obtain.
Love that. Yeah. Putting yourself in the environment with folks that are sharing your values and doing the right thing. So I love that. So I appreciate Ted. I appreciate you sharing your story. I appreciate what you're doing to help seniors. I want to encourage you to keep fighting the good fight, and with people that are challenged with these big things, with transitioning from homes and senior care and estate plans and all of those things. So keep fighting the good fight. Thank you so much. Again, you can find Ted at seniorlearninginstitute.com and also trustinted.com. He is a real estate agent in Missouri, and he is to me, the most specialized senior agent I think I've ever talked to. So if you need help or anyone else who's transitioning, especially anywhere in Missouri, please reach out to Ted, and he has a heart for serving, and he can help you out. Ted, any last words for our listeners before I let you go?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the time, Brett, first of all. And there are folks that do what I do throughout the country. Look for designations called a certified senior housing professional. There's only 113 of us that are doing that. There are also seniors real estate specialists. There are very few folks that have certified senior advisor designations that do what I do. But I would encourage you to reach out to me. Just go to the seniorlearninginstitute.com website. Or go to Trust in Ted or Ted at Trust in Ted, and just send me an email or give me a call, and I'll be happy to provide you whatever resources you need, whether it be a care manager or a real estate agent or anybody else that I can help you with. Just let me know. I can connect you with attorneys as well. Just utilize me as a resource. It'd be my pleasure to do so.
Thank you, Ted. And be sure to take advantage of that, trustinted.com and seniorlearninginstitute.com. And with that, thank you, Ted, for being on the show. And also want to thank our listeners for listening to another show of Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast, where we believe having a plan, such as an estate plan, such as a tax deferral plan in place, ready to go, is the best way for you to create and preserve more wealth. Don't get stuck in probate, or don't get stuck in families, fighting. Just get the plan in place today. Get with a good estate planning attorney, and have that all ready to go. As always, I'm your host, Brett Swarts. We look forward to seeing you and hearing from you on the next show. Thanks so much.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.